Maybe I am a little bit delusional, and I think there's more people doing this than there actually are. Hi everybody, my name is Alex, and on this channel I talk about all things knitting and crochet and fiber arts related in general. I recently visited a couple yarn stores for my first time as a person who can really appreciate the yarn. This is going to be a recap of the stores that I visited, the things that I saw, and the yarn that I bought. So if that sounds like it's interesting to you, buckle up, because I got a lot of stuff to show you. So where I live right now does not have a very good yarn store. I started crocheting a little over a year ago, and my whole year of crochet consisted of buying yarn from Michael's, like a big box craft store, and mostly acrylic yarn. I just started knitting maybe like 3 months ago now. On my knitting journey, I have dove headfirst into yarn and into fiber in general. And unfortunately, I can't really look or touch or feel or see in person yarns that everybody talks about in my day-to-day life because I don't have a yarn store near me that carries any good yarn. But a couple weeks ago, I was visiting one of my friends, and there were 2 really great yarn stores in her city. I'll link them down below because I feel like they're such incredible yarn stores. Like if you also live in the area, you should definitely check them out. I dragged my boyfriend along, and he actually went very willingly. He is so excited for me and my excitement about yarn and knitting and crochet. He is just excited for me to be this excited. He's like an incredible supporter. If I learned anything from this experience, it's vital to have another person there with me because I was getting so distracted, so indecisive. I don't think I would have walked out of there with anything if he had not been there with me. One important note here is that I went in having 2 projects in mind. So I went in with the plan to buy the right amount of yarn for 2 projects. The first is the blouse number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And the second is, what's it called? Nord Pullover by Han Rimmen. I'm sorry about my pronunciation. If I pronounce that wrong, please let me know so I pronounce it correctly in the future. Okay, let's get into the 2 stores that I visited. The first store that we went to is called Jimmy Bean's Wool. Let me make sure that's the name. Yeah, the first store I went to is called Jimmy Bean's Wool in South Reno, Nevada. Immediately walking in, this was my first time in a big yarn store with lots of options. And I can say I was just like completely overwhelmed. One thing that's really cool about this store is that they have single hanks and skeins set up all around. They expect everybody to walk around and touch them and feel them and take them off the hook. But then they have a whole warehouse in the back where they actually pull from. So the yarn that's on display is not the yarn that they sell, which I really appreciate because in the yarn store, everybody's going in, everybody's touching. There's like sharing a lot of surfaces with other people. Of course, in the wake of COVID, we should definitely be mindful of that. So I really appreciated that aspect. They also didn't have any prices on the hanks or skeins themselves. There were all these really cute little boards hung up around the shop that showed you how much each hank cost. They had, 4 different rooms. And now at the time of me sitting down to talk about this experience, I know so much more now than I did even when I was taking all this footage. So I wish that I had maybe gotten better footage, but I know that they had some pretty famous brands of yarn. Like they had Noro yarn, which I did not at the time appreciate. And then they also had this really beautiful cashmere yarn. I'm planning to make a Naked Tee by Naked Knit for my mom, and that calls for cashmere lace weight yarn. And I was thinking about maybe getting that. However, it was out of my budget. I think it was like $30 a hank. That was quite disappointing, but the colors were beautiful. My favorite room was this back room. I'll insert footage of like the whole wall of hanks. And I just thought that these colors were so incredible. I'm forgetting the name of the company now. It was 100% wool. It definitely had a woolly feel to it, but was still soft enough to wear close to skin. I felt just from the hank. I feel like all of these yarns could lend really well to color work. I was definitely considering these yarns for my Nord pullover. At this point, I wasn't really sure what color I wanted to make the blouse number 1 by My Favorite Things in yet. So I was really looking at all different colors. These 3 pink, purple yarns were by far my favorite. And now looking at this footage, I so wish that I had bought this middle color. I was like holding it up to my face to try to figure out if the color would look good on me. I was also really into these blues. There was a whole section of blue yarn. I was holding it up to my face and I felt like it was a little too cool toned for me. I definitely prefer a warm tone palette. I'm not sure. Side note here for a second. The whole color theory thing is confusing to me. And I don't know what season I am. I think I'm a fall. I don't know. There's like so many different variations of fall. I definitely prefer warm tone colors. and I prefer maybe higher contrast colors. I know the shirt that I'm wearing right now is like, it's a warm tone cream, is maybe in my neutrals. Like my favorite color is burgundy, and a close second to that is rust. So like high contrast, warm tone colors. Anyway, that was a total tangent. I felt like this blue was too cool toned for me, so I put it back down. But now looking at it, I really wish that I had some. These were also pretty affordable too. I think it was 100 grams Hanks, 100 gram Hanks, and they were about $10 a hank. So that's on par with like Knitting for Olive and for the same weight of yarn. Then on the other wall, there were these yarns that were, I'm not sure what this is called. If you know what this is called, please comment it down below. It looked like there was like a chain on the inside. Maybe it's called chainette. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. There's a chain for the core, and then it looked like there was fibers woven throughout the chain, and it gave such cool variation within the yarn without it being variegated. And I feel like it would knit up so beautifully to have all this different dimension within the strand itself. I think I took a video of the yarn composition. I don't remember totally. So if I did, I'll insert the yarn composition. I thought this type of yarn was so cool, and I would definitely consider purchasing it in the future. The reason I didn't get it though is because it was not for my 2 projects that I had in mind. I was very much hard set on the fact that I could only purchase for these 2 projects, because otherwise I would have spent like hundreds of dollars. They also had a side room that was cotton, acrylic, and acrylic or cotton blended yarns. So like a cotton wool blend or a acrylic wool blend, which I thought was a great option, that it's not just wool. In this yarn store, you can find every kind of fiber. Then in the little back corner, there was a whole wall of these super vibrant colors in, I think most of them were bulky weight. I thought, how cool would it be to make like a bulky weight, super vibrant sweater? I actually have a sweater that's really vibrant colors that I wear all the time, and it's not something that I would normally gravitate towards, but for some reason it's just like the perfect thing to throw on. Elevates any outfit, and I feel like something knit in one of these colors would be so cool. There was also a ton of mohair. The mohair was very expensive. By very expensive, I mean I'm comparing it to the only mohair I've bought so far, which is Drops. So I know that that is like the cheapest mohair that you can possibly buy, but it was maybe $10 to $11 per 25 gram ball, which was not in my budget. I couldn't buy enough of the mohair for either of the sweaters that I'm doing. And then finally, I got to this last section, which was all Yarn Citizen. I have discovered that I absolutely love Yarn Citizen. I think that all of their colors are in my palette. All of their colors are yarns that I could see myself wearing, and they're also pretty reasonably priced. So I was debating between a couple different colors. I ended up gravitating towards this chestnut color. It was knit up in this bag that was on one of their samples. At the time of me being in the store, it was like late March, and I was thinking, okay, this is not a spring color, but I just loved the color so much, and I actually have shown you this color in my spring knitting plans video. If you want to go check that out, I talk about all the things that are inspiring me this spring. It's a fingering weight, 100% Peruvian wool. Peruvian? I think it's Peruvian, and it's pretty soft, and I felt like it would drape really nicely. I was kind of going back and forth between this chestnut color and the pink color, but because I didn't really love this pink, the pink on me was again a little too cool toned, I went with the chestnut color. Also, at that point, we had been in this store for like an hour, and I was running around like a crazy person, and I couldn't make any decisions, and Max looked at me and he was like, you gotta choose, we gotta go, which was exactly what I needed him to say. So kind of on a whim, like I was really leaning towards that other pink yarn, which I might still go back and buy, but kind of last minute I changed my mind and I chose this chestnut. I bought 4 hanks that are, I think it's quite a lot of meterage per hank. It was maybe 340 meters per 100 gram hank. My original intention when I was buying this yarn was that I was going to hold this light fingering with a mohair to make the blouse number 1. And I actually bought mohair for it that I talked about in my spring knitting plans video. I bought I guess it's not mohair, I bought Drops brushed alpaca silk. I'll insert a clip of me holding it up from that other video. I did a swatch and then I was like holding it near my neck, and I thought it was maybe a little bit too itchy, which I know in that other video I said I find that the Drops brushed alpaca silk is not too itchy. I retract that statement. I've been trying to wear my step-by-step sweater that I made with it, and it is too itchy to wear comfortably. I definitely need to wear like a long sleeve turtleneck underneath it, which means that I'm not going to get anywhere out of this sweater until next winter, but I digress. It'll be fine. Anyway, I was originally gonna hold the Yarn Citizen with Drops, but then because I thought it was too itchy, I was like, okay, maybe I can just hold 2 strands together, but I didn't buy the yarn intending to hold 2 strands together. Then I was looking at the pattern. My favorite thing says in her Ravelry notes before you even purchase the pattern, so this is free content available to everybody, that you need 400 grams in my size of Drops not drops, of Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, which has less meterage than the Yarn Citizen. So I was like, oh, I have 400 grams of Yarn Citizen. Maybe that'll be okay. So that's what I'm doing. That is the plan. Maybe I'll show you. So this is the swatch with the Yarn Citizen and the Drops brushed alpaca silk. I think the Drops color is Rust. And then this is the Yarn Citizen by itself. So this is definitely two different colors, different yarn composition. But because I thought this one was a little too itchy, I'm gonna go ahead and make the blouse over one out of this. Another note about this store, you can buy their yarn online. This is a really great resource if you live in the United States because you don't have to pay for international shipping. They ship from the warehouses within the US. Please correct me if I'm wrong about that. That's how I assume it works because stores in the United States. Moving on to the other store. What was the other store called? The second store that I went to is called Yarn Refuge, also in Reno, Nevada. And this store was definitely smaller than Jimmy Bean's Wool. We walked in and there's this huge cabinets of yarn on your left and then like a ton of hanks hanging on the wall all around. And in the center, there's these couches and there was a bunch of women sitting around knitting, which I thought was so cool. I was like, oh my God, I just want to sit here with all my friends and knit and talk, knit and chat in real life. How cool is that to just go to the yarn store and like sit down and knit with people who also enjoy knitting? I was definitely the youngest one in that room, but I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, please let me know. I feel like knitting is making a comeback for Gen Z-ish, probably maybe Gen Z and millennials a little bit probably because of the pandemic, like we were at home with nothing to do. That's why I started crocheting. And then crochet is kind of like just a really good segue into knitting. The reason that I chose to start knitting is because while I do love crochet and I love crocheting, I don't love crochet garments. And I really wanted to start making like sweaters and shirts and wearable garments. I love the fabric that knitting makes. I was like, okay, I guess I'll learn knitting. And that's how I started knitting. Anyway, all this to say, that was quite the tangent. I love that there's this older generation who have been knitting for a long time, like in their 60s and above. And then there's all of us who are maybe 18 to 30 who are also knitting. And I feel like people don't realize that it's like coming back. Maybe I've just gone too far down into the rabbit hole of knitting podcasts on YouTube. Maybe I am a little bit delusional and I think there's more people doing this than there actually are because it's all that I consume now. It's like 100% of my content is knitting. But anyway, I just thought that was really cool that you walked in and there were all these women sitting around knitting. And I was like, I want to do that. How do I do that in life? How do we make that happen? Much to think about. Yarn Citizen, Yarn Refuge. Yarn Citizen, Yarn Refuge. Yarn Citizen was the yarn that I bought at Jimmy Bean's Wool. Yarn Refuge is the second yarn store that I went to. And it had a great selection of yarns as well. And definitely a little bit more expensive than Jimmy Bean's Wool. Jimmy Bean's Wool had a wide variety of yarns and different fibers that were around the $10 per 100 gram hank/skein, which I would say is on par to like yarn that you would buy online. Yarn Refuge was maybe more leaning towards like $20 to $30 per 100 gram hank. Obviously, they also had much more expensive yarns if you wanted to go there. I especially loved this yarn. I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but I'll insert a video that I have. And one of the women who was sitting on the couch knitting with all of her friends, she said to me, that is the best yarn. That is the only yarn I use now. And I looked at the price and it was $30 for a 100 gram hank. And I was like, I can't. I'm so glad that you are in a place right now that you can afford to only use this yarn, but that is not me. I can't do that right now. One day maybe I'll get to try out this yarn because it was so soft and felt so squishy and yummy. I was still on a mission to find yarn for this Nord pullover because I purchased yarn for the blouse number 1 and now I needed to purchase yarn for the Nord pullover. I really want to recreate the Nord pullover in the colors that the designer knitted in. Like I love this cream and I think she uses a black or a dark gray as the contrast color. I love that vibe. I want to make this specific garment. So I was looking for a cream. Everything was very much like pure white, which I personally don't think I look great in a pure white. I have this tissue right here. Pure white cream, you know? The little color analysis thing. But then I went into this little back room and there was Cascade 220 in there, which I have heard so many amazing things about, specifically Tamara Jordan of the Starcross Knits. A lot of the knitting content that I consume on Instagram and YouTube is people who live not in the United States, like people who live in England or Australia or definitely Scandinavia, Denmark, Copenhagen. That is a total vibe, and I totally understand why, because it is cold there, so let's knit our little hearts out. But me being in the United States, I don't have a lot of access to the same yarns, but Tamara Jordan, Starcross Knits, she also lives in the US, and she uses Cascade 220. Is it a yarn that's of US origin. I don't know. Maybe editing me will know. She said that she has some itch sensitivity sometimes to some woolly wools, but that Cascade 220 gave her no problems. As I have recently had a not so good experience with some itchy knits, I was very much wanting to try this Cascade 220. And they had it in this beautiful, perfect color. This is the exact white that I wanted. It is a off-white cream, warm toned white. I don't know what the exact color that I got is, but I will insert it here. And they had enough for a full sweater's quantity. This sweater, this Nord pullover, is oversized and therefore uses a lot of yarn. I think you need like 1,500 meters to make the sweater. So I got 8 100-gram hanks, which I think is 1,500 meters. Editing me will correct that math if it's wrong. Then I just needed to find a contrast color. So I was looking, Max and I were like looking for all the blacks, charcoal grays that we could possibly find. I found this, was it Judy something yarn that was so lovely and soft and squishy, and I loved the little skeins that it came in. I thought that this was perfect. Like, this is what I want to make the sweater out of. And it was actually a navy blue. At this point, I thought, maybe I need to make it a navy blue instead of a black or a charcoal gray. It's kind of like giving a nautical vibe. I don't know why I think white and navy blue is nautical. I'm imagining in the summertime when we've been at the beach all day, but then it's chilly at night, or like I'm on a sailboat and it's a little windy, so I put my pullover on. Who am I? Where am I going? Where am I going to find a boat? But this yarn was too expensive. I don't remember how much it was, but it was definitely out of budget. These were only 50-gram skeins, $15 for a 50-gram skein, which that is not going to cut it for the amount of yarn that I need. I wanted to use Cascade 220 for the contrast color too, but they only had superwash Cascade 220, and the cream color that I got was a non-superwash. And I really don't want to mix a superwash and a non-superwash in a color work, I mean, this isn't really color, it's kind of color work. There's like, the stripes are color work because you're alternating color every other stitch. I didn't want to use a superwash and a non-superwash because I feel like superwash will grow much more in blocking than non-superwash, and it would make it all stitches all uneven, and I haven't done color work at all yet to begin with, so I just want to stick with all the same type of fiber for my first go. After looking around a little bit more, I decided that I was just gonna order Cascade 220 in navy blue online, and I ended up purchasing it from Wool Warehouse. I'll get it for you. This is the color that I got at Yarn Refuge. It is in the color natural. That makes sense. Maybe it's undyed. That'd be cool. But there are 200 meters in 100 grams, and I got 8 hanks. So what is 200 times 8? 1,600 meters. I have quite a lot of this, which is good. I want to have more than not enough. And then I ordered this yarn from Wool Warehouse, and this is in the color, there's no color on here. I think it's just the navy blue. I'll insert it on the screen. But I think that these are going to make such a good combination for the Nord pullover. And it's good to know that I can order Cascade 220 from Wool Warehouse and get it in the United States. Forget how much this was, but this one was, I think, $11.50 a hank, which I think is pretty good for 100 grams. And yeah, I'm very excited about this. Oh, one more thing. I also bought Chaigu needles at Yarn Refuge. Did I buy cables or did I bought an 8-inch mini twist cable. I have some like other stuff in there, but I just bought like a mini cable so that I can knit with smaller diameter needles. And it was cheaper than if I were to buy them online. I always love to support a small business as opposed to supporting a conglomerate like Amazon. So that was good. That concludes my little yarn shopping extravaganza. My first time going to a real yarn store. I'm gonna be dragging Max to a lot of yarn stores in the future. It's actually probably good that I don't have a great yarn store where I live, because otherwise I would be there every day. If you enjoy yarn as much as I do and you liked this video, please let me know by commenting down below, giving it a like. If you liked hanging out with me, maybe you can subscribe. I'm planning to post videos hopefully once a week. We'll see how long I can stick to that schedule. I really, I know I've said this before, but I really enjoy making videos, and I think I'm gonna keep doing it. And more than that, I really enjoy knitting. So thank you so much for being here. And if you stuck with me till the end, I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.